Okay, so my name is Suzanne Grossman. I direct career services at the Marxe School of Public and International Affairs. I'm going to put in the chat our school for those who are not familiar with us yet. We have 3 master's programs: a Master of International Affairs, Master of Public Administration, and a Master's in Education with a focus on higher education administration. And I know that some of our students and alumni are here, and we wanted to open up this event to all of CUNY because this is such an important topic. The way today will work is that Hannah Sun from the campaign will be giving a presentation. We will definitely have a Q&A afterwards, so you can hold your questions. If you have a specific clarifying question during the presentation, you could put it in the chat. We'll try to answer it, but then otherwise we'll be answering questions at the end. And we'll make a note too about the types of questions that we'll be handling, because they won't be of the very specific to your situation kind of questions, just to clarify that. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Hannah-san from the PSLF.nyc campaign. Thanks so much, Hannah, for being here, and I'll let you take it from there.
All right, thank you, Suzanne, and welcome everyone. I am going to share my screen. I always feel a little paranoid when I do this, that I'm going to share like my family's group chat or something. But could you all let me know, do you see a welcome slide deck? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So just a note, I'm not able to see the chat. So Suzanne and Samantha from Baruch will be helping me field the chat while the presentation is going. So welcome. I know you all introduced yourselves already in the chat with your name, but something that we've been doing too, just to, because we're all in the same community here, is introduce yourself. And also, if you're feeling bold, let us know if you yourself have student loans. I think this is probably a self-selecting group for this webinar, but some of our workshops have been a mixed group. So I am going to share today a lot of information about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, and specifically about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Waiver that's in effect until October 31st. And so my boss likes to say that the PSLF waiver, which is the acronym for Public Service Loan Forgiveness, has made 2022 a miracle year for student loan borrowers. So we'll find out why. Okay, so we have 2 main goals for today. One is to get your loans forgiven. We are advising folks to go to studentaid.gov/PSLF as soon as possible to fill out the help tool, which is on the landing page of that website, to see if you are eligible for loan forgiveness. If you're feeling like that's all the information that you need, you're welcome to sign up on this webinar and go to that tool right now. That's probably the key information for this workshop. Our second goal for today is to make a commitment to support our peers through simple awareness and action, or access actions, and just spreading the word about this program. So a lot of you all are alum of CUNY schools or are current students, and so I have a feeling that part of your friend network or family network is also made up of students or former students who have taken out student loans and are probably working in government or nonprofits or other public service sectors and are maybe eligible for this program. So following this workshop, we'll be sending out an email with both these slides, a recording of the webinar, and a lot of other links and resources that you can just hit forward and share with your friends and family and coworkers, neighbors, anyone who you think would be eligible for this program. All right. So just to start off, a very quick overview of the PSLF.nyc campaign, which is what I'm representing. We're a nonprofit launched in June and kind of an ad hoc effort. So we're just running from June until the end of this waiver period, which is October 31st. And so really our goal is to help get at least 540,000 New Yorkers who work in public service access to the $20 billion of loan forgiveness that's available before October 31st. And the way that we're doing that is partnering with institutions and nonprofits and other government agencies to really just share this information as widely as possible. And then, sorry, these slides feel a little bit redundant. So the presentation overview is a little bit about the PSLF waiver and program, how to apply, and then we'll end with a Q&A. All right, so the public service loan forgiveness program, it was started in 2007. The purpose of it is to forgive loans or remaining loan debt for all student loan borrowers who worked in nonprofit or government organizations after 10 years of service. The original language around the program was that people had to reach 120 qualifying payments, and there's a lot of nuances on what that means. And once they did that, they were able to get loan forgiveness. So what the 120 payments means is that you have to just be employed at a public service agency during 120 periods. But if you take a break, so say you work for 5 years at a nonprofit full-time, which is defined as 30 hours, and then maybe you switch jobs, but you have 3 months off in between, and then you start working again at another nonprofit or at a government agency. Those 3 months in between don't count as part of your 120 payments, but they resume again once you start working again full-time. The problem with this program in its original form and what it will go back to after October 31st is that the policy was written so narrowly that after 14 years, only 16,000 people had gotten loan forgiveness. And so reasons for this are people were maybe under a repayment plan that didn't qualify, or they needed to consolidate their loans but weren't aware of that, and so they didn't qualify, or maybe they forgot to get their employment certification all signed off on. And so there are a lot of kind of rules that people didn't know about until it was too late. So when they applied for loan forgiveness, and this happened to my boss, who ended up getting loan forgiveness during this waiver. He worked for 10 years at a nonprofit, applied for loan forgiveness, but was told he was under the wrong repayment plan. And so his payments had to start at 0. So after making 10 years of payment, he was told he wasn't actually eligible for forgiveness just because he forgot to check off that he should be under an income-driven repayment plan. So this waiver allows folks to get some credits for payments that they may have made, even if they were partial payments during the past, since 2007, even if they wouldn't qualify under the normal PSLF program regulations. Oops. All right. So the new waiver that's in effect right now, this is the waiver that's in effect until October 31st. So this is the October 31st, Halloween is a deadline that we keep on emphasizing, because after October 31st, all of these kind of exceptions are no longer going to be in effect. So we're advising every public service worker, as I mentioned, who has student loans to go to the help tool at studentaid.gov/PSLF and fill out all of the information. So information that you'll need before sitting down to do this, because I know this happened to me and then it became like this whole tangent that I went on, is the EIN number. So that's the tax ID number for all of the employers that you've had that were public service employers. Your employment dates, so the dates that you worked at each of those jobs, if there's more than one. And then that's actually pretty much it. So once you have that information, you'll also need to know the addresses of your employers. You fill out the help tool with all of that information, and then afterwards it'll let you know either if you qualify for loan forgiveness automatically today, or it will let you know how many qualifying payment periods you have so far. And it's still worth doing even if you don't have 10 years of service, because the payments that you already have made or the payment periods that you've already worked through. So payment periods would be what we're in right now. Folks who have student loans don't necessarily have to pay their loans back right now because of a payment pause on student loans that's in effect until December 31st because of COVID. And so even though you may not be making payments, these months are counting towards your public service loan forgiveness program payments. So we're saying unless you have 100% confidence that you're not eligible, it's worthwhile to go to the help tool. The help tool doesn't submit any information unless you want it to. At the very end, there's an option to, and that option is really so that you don't have to fill out the forms yourself because you've already filled it out through the help tool. But it's really just to gauge. It's to help you gauge where you're at in your repayment. Another thing that we're emphasizing is that even if you've been rejected before or told you don't qualify, the PSLF waiver is a new opportunity. So like I said, my boss who created this campaign because he was so excited that he did get his loans forgiven, and many of our colleagues have actually been rejected for public service loan forgiveness in the past. But we're able to get their loans forgiven this year under the waiver. So we have one of our colleagues, Diana Caba, who's with the Hispanic Federation. I have her picture screenshotted on the last slide of our deck here. She recently got $180,000 of loans forgiven under this period, and she had already been rejected from loan forgiveness before the waiver period was in effect. So it feels like winning the lottery, I think, for a lot of folks. So it's something that we're encouraging everyone to try to see if they qualify for, or to at least submit your application for. And then again, even if you have fewer than 10 years of service, apply now to make sure you're given the credits that you are eligible for before the waiver expires. All right, so the application process. There are 4 basic steps. Depending on your individual situation, there might be a few other extra steps in between, but the basic overview is 1, use the help tool to find where you stand. That's the link that I keep on sharing, which is studentaid.gov/PSLF. 2, make sure that you have consolidated or go through the process of consolidating your loans to a direct type loan, because this is the loan type that's needed for public service loan forgiveness. And something that I should add too is that this program only applies to federal loans. So if you have a private loan, it doesn't qualify for public service loan forgiveness, unfortunately. 3, and this is the step that's the most time consuming for most folks, is to get your employer certifications. So as part of the application process, which I will share in an email after this webinar, you have to get a signature from each of your employers to confirm that you were in fact employed at that organization or at that agency during the time that you state on your application. So this applies to any employment that you've had since 2007, during the time you had student loans. And again, it's at any 501c3 or nonprofit or government job. One detail to note on this is that for the public service loan forgiveness program, they require you to have been employed for 30 hours a week on average during your employment period to qualify. So they're considering full-time 30 hours a week or more. You don't have to, a lot of us I know have held multiple part-time jobs at different times in our lives. And so if you have been in a situation or are currently in a situation where you have maybe 3 part-time jobs that add up to 30 hours a week, so maybe that are 10 hours a week each, that qualifies you for public service loan forgiveness still. So as long as your total employment at a public service agency or multiple agencies adds up to a total of 30 hours or more, even if they're part-time jobs, you're still eligible. So the only thing is you would have to get employer certifications for each of those jobs. So it's a little bit more paperwork, but you're definitely eligible to apply. And then the 4th step is to submit your application. And you have to do this before the October 31st deadline, which is really important. Another thing that we've been sharing with folks is that the processing period with the Department of Education has taken some time. And so you may not hear back from the Department of Ed about about confirmation about your application, or with any news about your loan forgiveness status for maybe 3 or 4 months at this point. But don't worry, you'll be okay. All right. So again, if you go to studentaid.gov/PSLF. This is, they actually changed the website, but basically this is what the website looks like right now. So you just log in, create an account if you don't have one already, to start with the help tool. We wanted to give an image for you all because I know there's a lot of information out there that may not be the correct information. So we want to make sure that you're going to the official websites or the right websites. So fill out the help tool here. This is what the tool will look like. You'll have to, again, as I mentioned, enter the information for all of your employers. And if you don't know some of the information, so maybe you don't know, the EIN number should be easy to look up if you just do a quick Google search. You could also go to guidestar.org. There are some folks who maybe worked at an organization or an agency that no longer exists. There's an option to check that on your application form. So if you're not able to get a signature or a verification of your employment because you're not able to get in contact with that organization for whatever reason, you can check that you're not able to do that. And that's something that the Department of Ed will keep into account when reviewing your application. Another thing is if you haven't consolidated your loans, we're recommending that folks do that because it's a requirement for the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program to make sure that your loans are consolidated under a direct loan program. All right, this is what the employer certification form looks like. So this is basically all the information that you'll need to have at your fingertips if you want to kind of zoom through the application process without going on tangents to look up information. So you'll need the employer's name, the tax ID number, which is the federal employer identification number, the address of the employer, website, your employment dates, your status as full-time. So again, if you've worked 30 hours or more at an organization, you can check full-time. And then it'll run you through these kind of questions to determine whether or not your agency is eligible. But basically, if you're employed again at a nonprofit or at a government agency, you will be eligible for this program. And then as I mentioned, the time-consuming part for most people has been tracking down their employers and making sure that all of their employers sign off on their forms. This is the application again. Another thing that we're noting for folks, the Department of Ed did reissue a new application form, but some of the text on both the studentaid.gov website and some of the forms that they have available have not been updated because changes are rolling out so quickly. And so just there are a lot of fine details that are being missed right now. And so one example of this is on the application for public service loan forgiveness. The form says some things like for number 2 must be employed by a full-time qualifying employer when you apply for forgiveness. That's not true as long as you've already made 100 or been employed at a public service agency for your 120 pay period. So if you feel like if you've already completed this employment and the pay periods that you went through, and now maybe you work at a non-qualifying agency or you are retired, you can still apply for public service loan forgiveness. You don't necessarily have to be currently employed at a public service loan or a public service agency at the time of your application. So all to say, if there's information that feels like it's a discrepancy in the application forms or on the website, this is why. It's just because they're slowly updating things as news is rolling out. This is my boss's account, loan inbox. His name is Rich. And the reason why we screen share this is to just show how many times you may be in contact with the Department of Ed before you receive full forgiveness. And so he applied for a loan forgiveness and filled out forms multiple times, and then I think 1 or 2 times received notification that his loans didn't qualify. And then one day when the Department of Ed finally went through all of his paperwork, he got a notification that his loan balance was zero. And so he logged in, he likes to say that he logged in on May 11th and suddenly all of his loans had been forgiven. And so this is just all to say, like, don't be discouraged if it takes a long time for your full application to process, especially if you've had multiple employers. It just takes a little while for the Department of Ed to confirm and certify all of your forms. So we also like to show this because I think for a lot of folks who are hearing about this loan forgiveness program, it feels too good to be true. But there are a lot of people who we've known, including our own team, who have gotten their loans forgiven. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. So again, a recap of everything is one, everyone on this call, if you have student loans, you've been working in the public sector, should start with the help tool that's at studentaid.gov/PSLF. As I mentioned, not all of the forms and web pages reflect the exceptions that are being made under the PSLF waiver, so don't be worried if you see old information. For most borrowers, the path for the application is pretty straightforward. Of course, everyone has an individual situation. Some people have taken out loans on behalf of their children or dependents. Some people have had maybe different fluctuating types of employment. And so if you are one of those people who don't have a straightforward application, I can answer some questions today, but I do want to say as a disclaimer, I'm not a trained financial counselor. I'm just trained in this waiver information. So we're sending folks to our partners at EdCap and the New York City Financial Empowerment Centers. I will, again, in following this webinar, be sharing out information for how to contact those organizations, but we're recommending that you make a one-on-one appointment with either of those agencies to get financial counseling, and they can help walk through your application process with you and answer any of the unique questions that you might have that only apply to you. We're recommending, but again, if you have reservations about this, I would talk to one of our financial counselors. We're recommending folks consolidate and get their employer certifications. So consolidate your loan so that you're under the right loan program. And then we're, as you saw in Rich's loan inbox, many borrowers will see at least one rejection message while the government is reviewing all your paperwork. So it's okay to wait it out. If it makes you feel better, you can feel free to contact the Department of Ed, but our experience has been that most people who wait it out will eventually, and if you are confident that you submitted all the right paperwork and that your employment qualifies, you'll eventually get a notice about either the progress that you've made on your payments so far, or that your loans have been forgiven. One amazing thing about this program is that several of our peers, including Rich, ended up overpaying, so making student loan payments even after their 120 qualifying payments because they weren't aware that they were eligible for forgiveness, or they weren't eligible for forgiveness until the waiver period happens. And so in addition to getting their loans forgiven, they're also getting a reimbursement check from the government for any of the loans that they've overpaid. So that's something that's hopeful for all of us. Oops, I advanced too quickly. And then again, we have support available for folks who maybe have more complex situations that they're in, both with our partner organizations, EdCap and New York City Financial Empowerment Centers. And we're also, we have this in the works already, so the information isn't available yet, but we're still, and because we're still coordinating the dates and times, but we're planning for the last 2 to 3 weeks of October, which is the last couple of weeks of this waiver period, to be offering drop-in one-on-one counseling sessions for folks every day for the last 2 to 3 weeks of October. So stay tuned for that information if it's something that you come across, you find that you may need. All right, this is our colleague Diana Kaba, who you can just go to to her Twitter page and watch her video about how she got her loans forgiven. But again, we just like to share success stories because we want to encourage you all to apply or see if you're eligible or at least get some credits. Something that we're saying is that the process is easier than doing your taxes, but maybe a little bit harder than sending texts on your smartphone every day. So it's kind of in the in-between. It's not an impossible process, but we know like the barrier sometimes to getting through all the information or even to just sitting down and getting started is the hardest part.
Hannah, can I just have, is there a slide before this slide you could put up? Oh, okay.
Was it this one?
Oh yeah, this one.
Yeah, I advanced it too quickly. That's why.
Yeah, can you just like underscore this? What I found intriguing was like the one-to-one support, like how, yeah, just so this will be something that people can afterward get this information from us and how to get that one-to-one help.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you need more more free and in capital letters help, these are some of the organizations that we're partnering with. So any of these 3 organizations have financial counselors available. You can make an appointment with any of them to get one-on-one help, as Suzanne said. So for New York City folks, we are recommending the first 2 NYC Financial Empowerment Centers or Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program, which is EDCAP for short, and they're a program of the Community Service Society of New York. You're also welcome to contact Institute of Student Loan Advisors. They're they're a national organization, so I think they may be a little bit harder to get in touch with, but they're also available for the same type of one-on-one support. So again, this information will be shared out to you, so feel free to call them right now. But if you're, if you don't jot down their information now, that's okay. You'll get it in your emails. And that's actually my last slide, I believe. I think the last one is just Q&A. Yeah, so thank you. Sign up for our mailing list for updates. It's on our website. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me at hannah@PSLF.nyc. I'm just going to backtrack in case anyone wants to have this slide or get the information on this slide for a few more seconds. But other than that, this is our very rapid presentation where we talk really quickly and then I feel very thirsty afterwards. But if anyone, this is our moment for Q&A. So any folks who have questions.
Yeah, there were quite a few questions in the chat. Okay. I didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start off because I think there is some questions around this that I think people are confused at this point because the Biden administration came out with an announcement about loan forgiveness. And I think then people are seeing this program and what I know that that's probably outside the scope of this conversation, but what do you have to say about that announcement and how it relates to this or doesn't relate?
Yeah, it's relevant because it applies to many of the same people. So Biden's announcement about automatic student loan forgiveness for especially for folks who for anyone who has student loan debt. So his program is $10,000 to $20,000 or up to $20,000 of loan forgiveness. And that's for anyone with student loan debt. So it's not necessarily for people who have worked in public service. It applies to anyone. That program is, I know he made his announcement. I think it's probably going to be enacted, but I know that there are concerns that lawsuits are in the works, and so that the program might take a while to move through. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is a separate program. And again, it's for folks who have been working in public service for, we say 120 pay periods, but that's essentially 10 years or more. And so there's a little bit of, it applies to a subset of student loan borrowers who have been working in public service. So if you have more than $10,000 in loans, or depending on your situation, $20,000 in loans, and have worked in public service full time, we're recommending this as applying for public service loan forgiveness because that's an avenue for getting the remainder of your loan debt forgiven.
And I think the Biden administration one, there is an income piece to it. You have to make below a certain amount, whereas I don't think this one doesn't have that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Biden one, I believe it's 120K, $120,000 a year, or
There's a
less,
married version too.
or yeah, for single.
Yeah. Okay. And if you, for people say they've only worked for 5 years so far in public service,
Mhm.
where does the waiver come in? So it's like 5 years and then you have to continue forward the other 5 years following the new rules that'll come into effect?
Yeah, so we're still recommending that you apply for forgiveness just so that your 5 years of payment, to guarantee that your 5 years of payments so far, that you're credited for those payments. And so if you're, for example, if you've been making payments but aren't under the correct for the original public service loan forgiveness program, if you're not under the correct repayment plan, so that's either a graduated or an individual income-driven repayment plan, those payments may not qualify for forgiveness under the original public service loan forgiveness program, but they will qualify if you apply under the waiver. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a little jargony feeling. Another thing is that if you have been making payments as a full-time public service worker, but maybe you ran into a few months where you only made a partial payment because you were in a tight financial situation for those months. Under the waiver, even partial payments count towards as a payment for forgiveness. After the waiver expires on October 31st, those partial payments will not count as, you won't be credited for partial payments. So it's still worth filing your paperwork just to make sure that all payments periods that have passed so far, you get credited for.
And there's a question coming. It's not a special waiver form, right? It's just like everyone who's applying right now is in the waiver. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. There is a waiver form that's just been updated since August they're just trying to keep the information up to date. But if you and I will attach that form to my email follow-up, but if you submit the original pre-waiver period loan forgiveness, public service loan forgiveness application, they'll still consider it.
I think there's some questions of people who are like, they have loans from before, but now they're in school again for a different degree, like master's level, but they're working in a nonprofit. Like, how do you navigate is it the sort of the loans that are only for the degree from before? Like, do you understand what I mean?
I think so. Well, here, I'll answer and then you can let me know if that was
Okay.
the right, going down the right path. So if you took out loans maybe for your undergrad, or you went to school, you took out loans, and then you graduated or stopped going to that school for some reason, and then you started a new program. If you've been working in public service, it's all of your federal student loans that are eligible for forgiveness. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, like in my situation, I went to undergrad, I was an English major, and then I got my master's in social work. And after that, I was working in public service before, but as the example, say like after my grad school, my post-grad school work in public service happened after grad school. My undergrad loans would have still been eligible for forgiveness. But if you are deferring payment on your loans prior to your current school tenure, because you're going back to school, this current period doesn't count towards loan forgiveness, if that makes any sense, if you're not at a public service employer.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Christina's asking if you get your loans forgiven, like your boss got their loans forgiven, now can they go get a degree and then work another 10 years and get those forgiven for new loans?
Yeah, you could, if you wanted to.
Okay. I don't know how many people are going to do all that, but someone's asking about consolidating. All my loans are Parent Plus loans are federal, do I have to consolidate them into one loan?
Yes, you do. So one drawback of the current waiver is that Parent Plus loans as a standing alone are not eligible for forgiveness under the waiver period, but if you consolidate them with other federal loans, they will be.
And then for people with part-time work, I think you said 30 hours.
Mhm.
What if you had 2 part-time jobs that added up to 30, you could do that? Or
Yeah.
okay. I hope that answers that a question of part-time work. And when you're submitting information to your employer or past employer, are you giving them like a whole packet or just that form? Like usually just the one form to fill out?
Yeah, it depends on your employer. So I know for all of my employers, I've just given them the form, but they've been mostly small nonprofit agencies, and so more willing to sign off on forms. But I think some of the government agencies, I would check with your HR department, because some agencies want more information about what they're signing off on. But all that's needed for your application purposes is for your employer to sign off on the form. But depending on your employer, they may request more information.
To clarify, or just to kind of extend on that question. So for example, if someone has multiple employers that they need to submit this form to, do they need to send it to one employer, wait for it to get signed to send it to the next, or can it be split up and kind of sent? Can separate pages be sent separately to get it back all together?
Yes, you can submit separate pages to everyone at the same time so that it's not like a whole train of everyone passing the baton.
There are 2 people with their hands up. I want to caution that I will ask you to unmute, but please make sure it's not a very specific question that's not going to apply to other people. Angelo, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. I was gonna ask, like, let's say I'm eligible for the loan forgiveness, like, will I be able to see it like posted on CUNY first?
This is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, Angela, this is not something that is done through CUNY first. So you wouldn't see that loan. This loan forgiveness program is separate from what you see on CUNY first in financials.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dali?
Hi, thank you so much for this and all the information that you've given. I just have I have 2 questions, but I'll do my first one. I have a question about consolidation and exactly what that kind of looks like. So I have a bunch of separate federal loans from obviously like my time in school. Do I have to consolidate those into one? Do we have to consolidate all of our loans into one bigger loan? And do we have to do that before we apply for forgiveness, or can we do it after we've been approved?
Yes, you have to apply for consolidation before you apply. But the consolidation might not have happened until after the October 31st waiver expires. So apply for consolidation and then apply for student loan forgiveness, even if you haven't gotten notification about whether or not your loans have been consolidated. As long as you've applied for consolidation, you're all set. And you can do that at studentaid.gov as well. Sorry, I know that's the website that I keep on sharing, so I just laugh a little because all the information is in the same website.
Yeah, just to kind of go off of Dali's question, and then Dali, you can ask your second question. So you can apply to have your loans consolidated with whoever your loan borrower is, and apply for PSLF simultaneously. And then, yeah, those 2 processes can happen separately at the same time.
Yeah, and if you will find during the consolidation process that if you're applying for public service loan forgiveness or want your loans to be considered under the public service loan forgiveness program, that you should choose MOHELA, which is, it'll give you the option kind of automatic. Even if you don't select it, they'll automatically direct you there, but it might take longer. The loan provider is called MOHELA that you will be consolidating your loans under.
There was a prior question about, can you just say one more time about the pandemic? So if the pandemic payments, which seems like a really amazing thing, right? That during the pandemic, if you paused your payments, they still count. Can you clarify that?
Yeah, so since and this really helped me out. I hope it's helped a lot of you all out. So I believe it was March 2020 when federal student loans, our payment periods were paused. So what that meant for all student loan borrowers was that we didn't have to make payments during this period. And we also we weren't accruing interest even if we didn't make payments. And so this has been extended a few times, most recently over the summer. It was extended for what the government is saying one last time until December 31st. So since March 2020 until December 31st, we're not having to make payments. You're welcome to make payments if you want to, but we don't need to make payments, and these pay periods, and that's why we are saying pay periods rather than payments, but all of these months that have passed since March 2020 are counting towards our public service loan forgiveness. So it should be I haven't done the actual calculation, but it's almost 30 months or 30 pay periods that we're being credited for that we haven't had to actually disperse a payment for.
Sonia, you had raised your hand.
Yes, I have two questions. I'm a former postal employee, and I guess my question I'm asking is that if I was in school and I haven't paid my student loan, am I still eligible for the program? I made the payments.
It depends on your employment dates and your student dates. So if you took out your student loans after your postal service employment, then those student loans are not eligible under the program. So all of your qualifying employment has to have happened after you've taken out your student loans.
Serlin?
I had another question.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, I missed that. Just try to make sure the questions are not super specific, because
Okay.
we're letting you do one-to-one appointments or we're suggesting you do that. Is it
Okay.
something general to others?
Yeah, it's general. It's pertaining to the presentation. If someone cannot find their employee number, I think she was mentioning in the presentation that you can do a Google search on something you said about the employee number or something.
Yeah, so the original, and I always I'm going to put it in the chat, but
Okay.
they used to be guidestar.org. I think they're now called Candid. But if you go to GuideStar, it should automatically direct you to the correct website, because this is an organization that merged, I think, in the past couple of years. But you can look up for nonprofits, you can look up all EIN numbers for nonprofit organizations at this website. And I think you'll have to register an account, but it's free to do so. But the EIN number or the FEIN number is publicly available information. So if you don't want to go through the process of creating an account, you should be able to just Google the name of your organization, but make sure it's the official name. So some nonprofits, for example, will be their official name registered with the government will be like CUNY, Inc. or something like that. There will be an extra few letters or addition to the government recognized name that isn't used like verbally or in communications. You should be able to find that there. There's also for all city agencies, they all share one tax ID number. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it will be in the email of resources that's shared after this call.
We'll take one more question. Sir, or raise a hand kind. Serlin, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Good day, everyone. So I wanted to know, how could you know for sure if all your loans is consolidated? In terms of if you had did some in the past and you have new loans, would it automatically be consolidated, or you have to apply for those new ones to be consolidated?
You would have to apply for your new loans to be consolidated. They wouldn't be automatically rolled into the formerly consolidated loans. But if you have an account at studentaid.gov, it should list out all of the federal loans that you have taken out and the amounts. So it would include the amounts, the name of the loan, and when you open the loan. And so you'll be able to see in your account there what your loan stat or your consolidation status is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll pause there on the questions, and I want to thank Hannah. Please join me in thanking Hannah and the PSLF.nyc campaign for leading the presentation today. We will be sure to send out the slides. Yes, you're going to send them. We'll figure out who's going to send what, but so everyone is here today. We'll get a copy of the recording. You will get the slides, and you will get information on how to get further support for this process. Any parting words, Hannah?
Just that I just encourage you all to apply, even if you feel like you may not qualify, because the worst that would happen is you submit an application and that's it. So the best that could happen is that you get your loans forgiven. So I recommend taking a few minutes just to go through that process. For folks who are in a most like standard, have a straightforward application process, it's taken them on average 30 minutes to complete. So it's not that much time to be possibly loan-free, student loan-free at least. So yeah, best of luck with everyone. If you have questions, again, as Suzanne said, we're sending out a lot of resources this week for you all, but you could also feel free to contact me via email, and I can direct you to wherever can best help you if I'm not the person.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate the presentation today. Take care, everyone. We're hoping you can take the steps forward needed for this process, and we'll send you some follow-up information soon. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.